This universe is not just a stage. Every moment, every encounter, every emotion follows a law. We live within that flow, and now we begin to uncover its truth together. Welcome to the law of the universe, where your consciousness begins to awaken.
Blaming others. There are certain principles that govern human life. Among them, blaming others or expressing constant complaints is one of the most harmful behaviors. Starting to complain marks the beginning of hardship. The moment you blame someone else, you step into difficulty. These are two essential virtues we must always keep in mind. Of course, it's possible to complain or blame others, but doing so will bring about hardship. This is inevitable, something not even God can prevent. Without realizing it, your difficulties will gradually worsen until they become unbearable. So why do we end up blaming others? We must understand the root of this tendency. When things don't go well, it's simply because we lack the ability to handle them. Everything in the world comes to us in the form and at the time we need it. But if we're not properly prepared, we cannot manage it. This leads to problems in relationships and in the work we do. In short, hardship comes not from others, but from our own lack of skill or readiness. Ultimately, it means we're facing situations for which we are not yet equipped. Of course, things won't go well. This isn't a matter of blaming others, it's a chance to reflect on ourselves. Even if such self-awareness isn't yet second nature, it's something we must cultivate. This is vitally important. If poor habits have taken root due to a lack of training, now is the time to begin that training. The instruction not to blame others is as sacred as a divine command. When hardship strikes, it stems from within, not from someone else. If you haven't studied the right way until now, start learning through this person's teaching. He didn't come to preach religion but to help us learn. If we study properly and deal with the world with a correct mindset, we will never face insurmountable hardships. Even problems from the past will begin to resolve. But if we continue blaming others, we won't be able to build ourselves up, nor will we be able to use our power effectively. Instead, we will face hardship over and over again. That's why blaming others must stop. This is a firm and clear directive. Do not complain. Even if you were born in a war-torn land, there is a reason for that. That place is your starting point. Complaining only clouds the meaning of your life and makes things harder. Begin there and live rightly. If you weren't born into wealth, don't blame that either. There's meaning in where and how you were born. Learn from that, and you can live a life more radiant than those born into riches. You were born into your particular environment because it is the perfect match for you. To shape a self that spans both past and future lives, you were born there. Complaining won't solve anything. Always be grateful for the circumstances you've been given. They are gifts of nature. Complaining about them only makes life harder. Even if this teacher explains it so clearly and you still want to complain, you're free to do so. That too is a form of learning, though a difficult one. But if you've come to this person to improve yourself, then complaining is like drinking poison. It is deeply harmful to your well-being. Engrave this deeply in your heart. Do not blame others. Do not complain. The environment we are given is a gift from nature. If we handle it well, we'll be led to the next stage of life, to better worlds, to better relationships, and to a radiant life of meaningful work. Therefore, these two habits, blaming others and complaining, must be corrected without fail. Do you understand? Question 2. You said earlier that complaining brings hardship. But the previous person said complaining causes illness. Could you explain this principle in more detail? Answer. Yes, when life becomes difficult, illness arises. People fall ill when things get hard. No one gets sick while they're truly happy. Suffering leads to sickness. Thinking that money removes hardship is a poor person's perspective. Even the wealthy suffer. Hardship does not depend solely on money. You could have mountains of wealth and still face internal suffering. And when life gets hard, illness follows. Even kings get sick. So do CEOs. Why? Because they suffer. A king has his burdens. A chairman has his struggles. Hardship is tied to one's position and personal state. A highly educated person suffers from the weight of their knowledge. A wealthy person struggles with the responsibility and pressure of their assets. And when things get hard, even they fall ill, you must understand the mechanism behind illness. When you feel stifled, angry, or blame others, when your actions are misaligned with truth, life becomes difficult and illness sets in. The principles behind hardship and illness are the same. They are not separate concepts. Now, what is illness really? It's not just when the liver is malfunctioning. Even when things don't go your way, when you feel stuck or frustrated, that too is illness. Illness comes in many forms. Feeling trapped is a sickness. If you don't resolve that pressure, it builds up inside. Emotional burdens become internal diseases, and eventually manifest in the body. When you live against the principles of life, illness appears. When you live wrongly, suffering follows. So remember, hardship and illness are two sides of the same coin. Topic: Why you should never blame others or complain. 1. Blaming and complaining invite hardship. The moment you start to complain or blame others, difficulty begins. These habits make problems grow and become harder to resolve. 2. All problems come from a lack of readiness. Things go wrong not because of others, but because you weren't prepared. Life gives you exactly what you need at the right time. If you're not ready, you can't handle it properly. 3. Your environment is not a mistake. Being born poor or in a difficult situation isn't something to resent. It's where you were meant to begin. It's a starting point for your personal growth. 4. Complaining can lead to illness. Struggles bring sickness, not just physical, but emotional too. Frustration, resentment, and helplessness are all forms of internal suffering that can turn into real illness. 5. Even kings and CEOs get sick. Wealth and power don't protect anyone from hardship. Every person suffers in their own way based on their position in life. That suffering can lead to disease. 6. If you want to change your life, stop complaining. Complaining is like drinking poison, it harms you, not others. Instead of blaming others, look inward and prepare yourself. That's the path to true change. Final message: do not blame others. Do not complain. Every part of your life is a gift meant to help you grow. When you accept this and prepare yourself sincerely, even past hardships will begin to resolve, and you'll step into a brighter, freer future. The light that rose from the mud house, fiction growth overcoming resentment. Inspired by Master CHEON Gong's teachings, at the edge of a quiet mountain village stood a crumbling mud house. Its roof sagged, its walls were cracked, and when it rained, water leaked through every corner. That's where GONG lived. Every night, he looked up at the ceiling and whispered the same bitter questions. Why'd I have to live like this? Why did my father leave us? Why is my mother bedridden, and why'd I have to carry it all? Resentment lived inside him like a second heart, pulsing with every breath. One rainy afternoon, seeking shelter, GONG stepped into the village library. He wandered aimlessly until a worn-out booklet caught his eye. Complaint is the root of suffering, teachings of CHEON Gong. He almost laughed and turned away, but something drew his hand to pick it up. As he flipped through the pages, one sentence stopped him cold. The life you are living is not a punishment, it is the classroom tailored for your soul. The more you complain, the harder the lesson becomes. He closed the book quickly. His chest felt tight. Are you saying I should be grateful for this life? He muttered bitterly. But the words wouldn't leave him. They echoed through his thoughts for days. Then, without warning, his mother collapsed with a high fever. There was no money for a hospital, no one to call for help. Desperate, GONG finally visited the local welfare center. The woman at the front desk listened silently, then gently said, "You've done your best. I'm so glad you came." That single sentence, simple, kind, broke something inside him. It was the first time someone acknowledged his struggle without blame or pity. That night, he returned to the library and read the booklet from cover to cover. And for the first time, he made a vow: I will stop blaming others. The next morning before dawn, he left his mother resting and walked to the next town's construction site. He worked all day carrying bricks, mixing cement, his hands blistered and aching. At first, people laughed at him. What can a skinny kid like you do? He kept showing up. Quiet. Steady. Grateful. 3 months later, he moved his mother to a small rented room with clean air and running water. She began receiving regular treatment. Life was still hard, but something had changed. One day, the site manager approached him and said, "You know, Jae-woon, when you smile, it lights up the place." "That's rare. You're rare." Jae-woon smiled back. Not because life was easy, but because he no longer carried the weight of blame on his back. Years passed. Jae-woon learned carpentry and began building small eco-houses. The first home he rebuilt was his childhood mud house. But this time, it stood strong, made of wood, warmth, and purpose. At the entrance, he hung a handmade wooden sign. "This is where I begin again. I've laid down blame and now I rise with gratitude." The mud house that once symbolized pain was now a beacon of hope, proof that even the harshest beginnings can bloom into light when we stop blaming the world and start rebuilding ourselves. Summary: born into poverty, abandoned by his father, and burdened by a sick mother, Jae-woon spent years blaming the world. But everything changed the day he read a single line from a small booklet: "Complaining only deepens suffering." From that moment on, he stopped blaming others and began changing himself. Years later, he rebuilt the house where his pain began, not with bitterness, but with gratitude and purpose. This is a story that reminds us, it's not about where you start, but how you live from there. The end: what kind of environment are you living in right now? Is there something within it you can still be grateful for? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your story.